Hello, everybody. Um, we have so far seen the two characters of Dhritarashtra, born out of tamas, and Duryodhan, born out of rajas. So, as I told you, the gunas can never be seen by themselves, but their manifestation happens in the behavior of the person, and that behavior then tells us behavior is the effect, and that tells us what the cause is. So the verses that we studied last time, we see Sanjay stepping out of his chariot, talking out of place. It was not his place to speak. Okay, he spoke, but then he also spoke what was incorrect. So he went and ordered his acharya without any formal greetings, which was not the way. That is not the way you talk to your teacher. Not only that, he reminded his teacher that his death was standing on the other side. So you're basically frightening the people on your own side, telling them that their death is standing on the other side. Then he also refers to his teacher as a Brahmin, Dvija, Dvijottama. You are the best among the twice born. You're the best there. Yes, I understand that. That's okay. Teaching warfare is one thing, but can you really fight? So that also is insulting. It's sarcastic that you are a good teacher, but does that make you a good warrior as well? And then he goes on to list all the warriors from the Pandava side, which was also very unnecessary because each side knew who all were on the other side. So Dronacharya also knew who was fighting on the Pandava side, who was fighting on the Kaurava side. There was no need to um, list them. And finally, what happens with Rajas is he speaks wrong, then he realizes. That's the problem. He will speak and then realize. Sattva will realize first and not speak. Tamas will not speak at all. Or if tamas speaks, they will not also realize that they have said something wrong. That is the difference. So with Duryodhan being Rajasic, suddenly he realizes, oh my God, what am I doing? I have not spoken correctly. So he tries to make amends by listing the warriors on his side and starting with Dronacharya, which was again incorrect because the start should have been with Bhishmacharya because he was the senior most, he was the commanding officer. So again, he makes a mistake. And then he goes on to say that Madarthe Tyakta Jivitaha. That is, those are the key words that are telling us the Rajasic Guna. So they have come to lay their life, to give their life for me. That is what Rajas always thinks. It's everything is for me. So he's the center of attention. Actually, most of the kings that were there were for Bhishmacharya. They were not for Duryodhana. Duryodhana was downright evil. So any good king would never be siding with him. Of course, his brothers, and of course, there are some people who were on his side, but few. Majority of them were there for Bhishmacharya. So they were not there to lay their life down for his sake, maybe for Bhishma's sake, but not for his. But he thinks like that. He thinks like that, right? And then he goes on to say, aparyaptam and paryaptam. Swami Swatmananda actually introduced this chapter this morning. Those who have not seen it in the morning, do see it. I'll talk about it a little bit more. But he also gave a very beautiful interpretation of this verse, which I liked. He says that even though aparyaptam, because there are two meanings I told you, unlimited or insufficient. He says, even though our army is very big, because they had 11 divisions, our army is very big, it is insufficient because Bhishma's loyalties are towards Pandavas. This is the interpretation. So both meanings are taken. Our army is unlimited, but yet it is insufficient because Bhishma's loyalties are towards the Pandavas, and Bhima's, the army protected by Bhima, means the Pandava army is insufficient because it's only 7 divisions. It is insufficient, yet it is unlimited because of Bhima's vows. So this is another interpretation of it. So both ways you can take it. It's an interpretation. I have to tell you that Bhagwan Shankaracharya has not written a commentary on the first chapter and the first 9 verses of chapter 2. So these interpretations are from various other commentators. There are many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita. which I think I've not mentioned. So it's not just Bhagwan's, but the most glorified is Bhagwan Shankaracharya's commentary. And most of the schools, the ashramas, will teach Bhagwan Shankaracharya's commentary. And of course, Chinmay Mission, our foundation is based on Bhagwan's Bhasha. And then Gurudev wanted it that way, that we study the Bhasha thoroughly, and then we give our own interpretations, all the brahmacharis, etc. So that is the interpretation that he gave of that verse, which I really liked. And then, not that what I said was incorrect, that is also, it's interpretation. So both are correct. And then he goes on to again make another mistake, asking the army to protect Bhishma. Okay, Bhishma did not need any protection. Bhishma was capable of protecting himself, protecting the entire army. He doesn't need the army to protect him. And now what is happening is, now Bhishma has had enough. He's hearing all this thing that is going on. Everybody around are hearing it. He's also right there. So he has had it. Let's put it that way in our language. He has had it, and so that Duryodhana will keep quiet, because don't know what else to do. Now this is what he does. Verse 12, we are on verse 12. Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vruddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyochaihi shankham dabnyo pratapavan shankadadmau pratapavan. His mighty grandsire Bhishma, the oldest of the Kauravas, in order to cheer Duryodhana, now sounded aloud a lion's roar and blew his conch. So, couple things we have to note here. To cheer Duryodhana means to silence him. It's a nice way of putting it there. So that Duryodhana will keep quiet. Now sounded aloud a lion's roar doesn't mean that he roared like a lion, but when he blew his conch, it was like a lion's roar, means it was loud. The way the armies used to be set up that time, see, both armies are standing face to face on that battlefield. So Bhishma is the commanding officer, so he's right in the front. Then what will happen is his army will be behind him. Then the next king will be there. There'll be another senior king. Then his army will be there. Then there'll be, because everybody can't stand in one row, the whole army. So they will be standing like this. So there'll be Bhishma, then his army, then the next king, then his army, then next king, then his. So that way it goes. Now, what they would do is, and that's what we'll see in the next verse, is that Bhishma will sound, or whoever will sound his conch first, but the sound will only go up to a certain extent. It will definitely go to king number 2, who will then blow his conch, because he has heard this first conch, so he will blow. Number 2 king will blow. Then number 3, who is behind him, will hear. He will blow. He will, and that way that message will go to the last row of the army standing. This is how it happens. So here what he has done is, he has blown the conch. Not he roared like a lion, he blew his conch, which was very loud, to silence Duryodhana. But what now happens is, Kauravas were the ones who had done injustice to the Pandavas. So actually the Pandavas should be declaring war on the Kauravas, not the other way around. Like, Kaurava, injustice is done to the Pandavas. The one to whom injustice is done, that's why in the modern court, we have a plaintiff and we have a defendant. So the defendant has done some injustice to the plaintiff. So the plaintiff is the one that is going to court and filing charges. So the Pandavas should have officially declared war. So they should have blown the conch first, somebody from their side. Except now what has happened is, officially on record, the Kauravas only have declared war against the Pandavas. This is what happens. Okay, so this is what this verse means. That because of Duryodhana, and why did it happen? Because of Duryodhana. If Duryodhana hadn't been speaking, then Bhishma would have waited for Pandavas to declare war, because that was the correct thing, that the Pandavas had called the war. They should have declared it. But no. Now, Tataha, thereafter. Tata shankascha bheryascha panavanaka gomukhaha sahasaiva Bhyahanyanta sashabdastumulo bhavata. Then, following Bhishma, conches and kettle drums, tabors, drums, and cow horns blared forth quite suddenly, and the sound was tremendous. So these are the various conches, various instruments, and it says here blared forth quite suddenly, not that they automatically started making a sound. Whoever was holding them started blowing those instruments, like I told you, first Bhishma, then king number 2, 3, 4, 5, like that. It will go in a row, and this is what has happened. So go mukhaha, made out of cow horns, different conches. This bhairya is like, those of you who have seen Shivaji, or he had this like a C-shaped, it's called tutari in Marathi. That was their thing. They would blow that. There are different, these are just different instruments. The idea is that the Kauravas have now declared war, and Bhishma has blown his conch. So it's, when there is a race, we say get set, ready, go, right? This is how the whoever is there, empire, whatever, will say. So this is like get set. Now be alert. The war is going to start. Get set. So this is how it has happened. Now the important thing happens, because now Bhagwan enters the scene. So verse 14. Tata shvetairhayayukte mahati syandane stitau madhava pandavaschaiva divyo shankhau pradhabnatuhu. Then also Madhava and the son of Pandu, seated in their magnificent chariot, yoked with white horses, blew their divine conches. So now on the side of the Pandavas, who has declared war? Who blew the conch first? Bhagwan Shri Krishna. And Bhagwan was only a charioteer. Actually, the conch should have been blown by the commanding officer, Drishtadyumna. This is what shows you that how much importance the Pandavas had given Bhagwan Krishna. They didn't treat him just like our cousin and he's just a charioteer or anything. But the idea is that Bhagwan blew his conch first, and then Arjun blew his conch. The difference between Duryodhan and Arjun's behavior we have to understand here. Duryodhan started speaking before Acharya spoke, before commanding officer spoke. He just started first. Arjuna's thinking started only after Bhagwan had blown his conch. First Bhagwan blew his conch, means he indicated his participation in the war, and then Arjun now will start thinking after that. Then Arjun blew his conch. So takeaway for us is, we also must always allow Bhagwan to blow his conch in our heart every morning, every day. When we include Bhagwan in our life, I told you the significance of 18. 1 and 8, right? 8 is there, the material world, where we are engaging. But while engaging, if we include the 1, so when we are engaging, it's a race. But when you include 1, when you include God, it becomes grace. You add G to that race, grace, God. So 1 and 8. And this is what it means, that Bhagwan should blow his conch in our heart first. And for our Indian families, it's very easy. It's very simple. How do I do this? Just light a lamp in front of Bhagwan in the morning before you start your day. That's it. It's just a remembrance of God, that God, I remember you. Whoever, whichever God it is. And therefore we have our morning prayers and our evening prayers and night prayers, right? We also had prayers. That's what I was thinking. We used to have prayers even when we turned the light on in India. And 40 years I've been in this country. And now I'm thinking, at least I should do pranam, because Jyoti, knowledge, right? So this was the reason that every single thing, or I've noticed Swamijis, when they get into the car, when I drive them, Shri Ram, they'll say something like that, Hara Hara Mahadev, something. So it's, you remember Lord. My dad used to do, when we go on road trips, he'll say Hara Hara Mahadev when you start the car. So allow the Lord to be a part of your life. And allowing means he is always there, but we don't remember him. So remember it. Basically, it's nothing that big thing that you have to do. You just have to remember. And I've always given the example of, we have so many passwords and we have so many gods. So you have like 33 crores of passwords that you can choose from. And then every time you open an app, for children, this is a good example, right? Because now children are all doing everything on the computer. So every time you open your app, you are forced to say that name, whatever name of your favorite, Hanuman, whoever is Ganesha, whoever is your favorite deity, if you put that name as password, when you open every app on your computer, you have allowed the Lord to blow his conch in your heart. And when the Lord blows his conch in your heart, the work is coming out of Shama, not Kama. Kama is your own desire, your own ego and egocentric desire. So without the Lord, without remembering the Lord, whatever that you do, remember it's a race and it is out of karma. But when you include God, it becomes grace and it becomes work out of Shama. Shama is with you. Okay. So name of Bhagavan Shri Krishna. So this is what it is. What it is. That's why it is said Madhava Pandavaschaiva. So Madhava blew first, and then Pandava, Arjun, because Arjun was with him. Now here there is one thing, like when we listen to anything, each one of us takes in as per our own mental constitution. So it is said that there was this one person who would go to the temple and he would start reading the Bhagavad Gita, and he didn't read very well either. There were mistakes in his, when he was chanting, and he would come to this verse and then he would start crying and then go home, just go. So a week went by, 10 days went by, and the priest was observing this every day, that this person comes at this time, he starts reading the Bhagavad Gita, then he comes to this verse, and then he just cries, and then he goes home. So one day he asked him, he said, you know, I see you first of all, you're not chanting. Okay, that's okay, forget it. Not chanting properly is okay, but you're not reading the full Gita, but you're coming only to this particular verse, and then you go home, you stop. He says, because the whole purpose of Bhagavad Gita is to get a vision of the Lord. When I come to this verse, I actually see Bhagwan coming onto the battlefield. I see Bhagwan. Why do I need the rest of the Bhagavad Gita? Bhakta. That is the mindset of a devotee. So whatever is your mindset, that is what you will pick up. That's why we have commentaries. Bhagavan Shankaracharya fully based on knowledge, because he is only into knowledge. If you see Lokmanya Tilak's commentary, Karma Yoga, he has just picked up that he says this is all karma, karma, karma. Ishkon temple, bhakti, bhakti, bhakti. The text is the same. Text is the same. There is no change. But how we interpret it as per our mindset. So if you're a bhakta and if you come to this verse and if you really get the vision of the Lord, you honestly don't need the rest of the Bhagavad Gita. But unfortunately, our mind is not that much into bhakti. So we don't get a vision of the Lord. So we need to go further. So let's go further. Okay. Panchajanyam Rishikesho Devadattam Dhananjayah Poundram Dadmau Mahashankham Bhimakarma Vrukodaraha. The Rishikesha blew the Panchajanya. See, notice one thing, that on this side, Sanjay is not only giving the name of the person, but he's also giving the name of the conch, which he didn't do for the other side. Okay, so this tells you Sanjay's bias towards Bhagwan, he is also favorable towards Bhagwan and Pandavas. So, you know, when you love somebody, I'm sure grandmothers are very, they say, there's a little extra when it's your own grandchild. You know, little maybe, very subtle, but it's there, right? And I think grandmothers would agree with me. Of course they're good. So this is exactly what Sanjay is doing now. He just that he named the warriors on the other side. But here, you know, Rishikesha blew his conch, which was named Panchajanya. What is the need? That shows his love towards Bhagwan. Rishikesha blew the Panchajanya, and Dhananjaya, Arjuna, blew the Devadatta. His name, he's also named. And Vrukodara Bhima, the doer of terrible deeds, blew the great conch named Poundra. Now here we hear the story of Panchajanyam. This Panchajanya word, the name of the conch, comes because this conch actually belonged to a demon known as Panchajana. His name was Panchajana. Now, the way this Panchajana comes into the picture is Bhagwan Shri Krishna and Balram, they studied with Rishi Sandipani, as you know. That's why our Sandipani Sadhanalaya in Bombay is named after this Rishi Sandipani, who was the teacher of Krishna and Balram. Okay. And it is said that they studied 64 different arts in a, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard it was in 64 days they mastered, right? That's what, yeah, correct. So 64 different kalas they were called. Kala means art. So, or subjects we can take in a modern, 64 different subjects they studied in 64 days. It was Bhagwan Shri Krishna, what can you say? And I would like to mention that this ashram of Sandipani is still there near Ujjain, where there is Mahakaleshwar, the Swayambhu temple. And if you ever go there, then do ask your guide to take you to this Rishi Sandipani's ashram. I have been there. And the cutest thing is there are 3 small idols there, kept there. The Rishi Sandipani is a little big idol, but in front of him, just on the windowsill, they've kept 3 small idols. So I said, yeah, the 3, who is 3? So there is one Bhagwan Krishna, Balram, and Sudama. So cute. Just little, you know, just the yay big. 3 idols are there. So that ashram is still there. Anyway, coming back to our story. So when Shri Krishna and Balram finished their education, they asked their teacher, what Guru Dakshina should we give you? Like I told you, even Duryodhan asked for, Dronacharya asked for Drupada to be captured because the Guru Dakshina. So same way, Bhagwan also asked Sandipani, Rishi Sandipani. So what this demon had done was he had captured the son. He had abducted the son of Rishi Sandipani, this demon called Panchajana. He had abducted. So the Rishi says that my wife is very sad. My only son has been kidnapped by this demon and I would like my son back. So Bhagwan says, okay, he meditates and then he realizes that this demon is hiding under, he had gone under some river. He went in the water. He was hiding with the son under the water. So Varun Devata is invoked by Bhagwan Shri Krishna, and Shri Krishna Bhagwan and Balram, they go underwater and they kill the demon, and Bhagwan gets this conch from him, from that demon. So he kills the demon, he brings the Rishi's son back, and he gets the conch, Panchajanya. Now this Panchajanya, some of you from India, you would know that in the village there is a panchayat, you know, that is the court. It's in the small villages in India. I don't know whether, I'm sure they're still there. They used to have what is known as a pancha means 5, and Panchajanya for Krishna, it is said that he never did anything without consulting at least 5 people. So democracy. He didn't do it. He was Bhagwan. He could have just taken decisions, but he never took any decision without consulting at least 5 people. And that's why that panchayat has come, where there are 5 people who then decide who has done right, wrong, everything. So that is the story of Panchajanyam. Okay, that is the story of the conch. And Rishikesha means, it is referring to Bhagwan Shri Krishna. It means short haired. It means curly haired also. This name will come many times. But Rishika, one meaning of Rishika is senses, and Isha. It's Rishika and Isha. So Isha is Lord of the senses. So one who has captured, who has his senses under his complete control, that person is known as Rishikesha. And so here Sanjay is referring to Bhagwan Shri Krishna as Rishikesha. He who has controlled his senses complete. His senses are under his complete control. Okay, Devadattam Dhananjaya. So Devadatta, there are 2 stories of Devadatta means is the name of the conch. One story goes, Dhananjaya is referring to Arjun, and the reason his name is Dhananjaya because he was the one that gathered the maximum wealth for the Pandavas. So his name is Dhananjaya. And Devadatta was a conch that was given to him by Indra. It is said that at one point he had helped Indra with some war, and then Indra gave him this conch called Devadatta. And the other story is that when they were, when they came back, when Duryodhan tried to kill them in Varnavrata and all that, then finally they were found and when they were brought back, then Dhritarashtra gives them this barren land, because he says, I can't leave this Hastinapur and go. I am too old, blah, blah. You guys go, you are young. So then Bhagwan Shri Krishna calls the architect of the heavens, and he gets him to set up this Indraprastha. That was their capital. Hastinapur was the capital of the Kauravas, and Indraprastha was the capital of the Pandavas. So that is designed by this Vishwakarma. His name is Vishwakarma. He is the architect of the heavens. He is also the architect who designs Dwarka for Bhagwan Shri Krishna. So that architect is said to have given this conch to Dhananjay, to Arjuna, whatever, just this thing. Now this Dhananjay word, one is of course Dhana, one who is collecting Dhana, wealth. But if you add Sa Dhananjaya, Sa to it, Sa Dhananjaya, so that represents Sa, what is Sa represents an attitude of surrender. So he had this material wealth, Dhananjay, he has material wealth, but when we add Sa Dhananjay to it, because there is an attitude of surrender, he is also capable of getting the spiritual wealth, both. And that's what he will get now. Starting from chapter 2, that is the kind of wealth that he will get. There is one wealth which is, I've told you this, one wealth is the external wealth, which is money. But one wealth is the internal wealth. Lakshmi Devi represents both. The internal values of honesty, kindness, love, compassion, all these good virtues, they are also our wealth, which people don't recognize. They don't recognize that as wealth. Wealth, when they say, they only think of money. So this Dhananjay word, Poundram Dadmau Mahashankham. So Bhima being big, Vrukodara, Vruka means wolf, and Udara means stomach. So a wolf, if you look at the shape, is very shapely animal. So they say that Bhim, even though he ate the maximum of all the 5 brothers, he was huge. He had the strength of 20 elephants. So he actually ate also that much, but he had a very shapely body. That's why he's called as Vrukodara. So we who are struggling, we don't even eat. In my family, my cousin said, oh, we just have to look at food and we'll put on weight. I belong to that family. So Vrukodara means he ate a lot, but he still maintained his figure. That's why he's called Vrukodara. And of course, his Poundra, the conch, is Mahashankha, means it's a big one, because anything small would have just broken in his hands. No? Even if he would have done full, I think that conch would have broken, that much strength he had. So that's why his is a Mahashankha. It has to be a big one, big conch. Otherwise, small conch will listen. One more thing that we study in these two, because verses, is that the Shweta, in the previous verse, it said the horses, white horses, and he came in, his chariot came in. So we see the significance of the chariot. So if you look at the front of the book, you see this chariot. It's a very important metaphor from Kathopanishad. Kathopanishad, Lord Yama, who is the teacher, he's telling Nachiketas, the student, that the body is like a chariot. Okay, our body, human body. And the horses are the senses, our sense organs, which are going out, organs of perception. The reins that you see, they are the mind. Reins are the mind. And the charioteer is the intellect. So as long as the mind is held tight by the intellect, the horses will run, the senses will run. The road is the world that this body is going through, right? We not like we are physically walking every day, but it is this road of life that we are traveling on. This body is traveling on with the senses. The senses are looking outside to the world, and these senses, the king of the senses is the mind, and the mind has to be held by the intellect. If it is in control of the intellect, then the senses will not go astray like the horses. When the reins are held tight by the intellect, the horses do not have a chance to go helter-skelter. They will not, one horse will go here, this direction, that direction. Imagine if the 4 horses were going in 4 different directions, what will happen to the chariot? It'll break. And Arjuna, who is sitting, the Rathi here, Arjuna is sitting here, as you can see. That is the jiva, that is the experiencer that we talk about. It is the jiva, okay? And this is the body. So that is the significance of this chariot. It's very, very important to know. So for us, what happens is the senses are as though cursed to go outside. They're like the horses. The mind is controlling them, but the mind has to be controlled by the intellect. And that is why we say the human body, the head is on top. So the first thought should be from the head. Head should control the heart. The heart and head and heart should control the stomach, because it comes third in line in a vertical body. And finally the genitals. So finally this. So first head, then heart, which is the mind, then stomach, then genitals. Whereas in an animal, it is, that's why it's called Tiryanga, horizontal. So all 4 are in the same line. So if we start behaving like that, that's why then they say your behavior is like, if we behave out of instinct alone, the mind is telling me to do this, so I do. Mind is telling me to do that, so I do that. I do that. Without the control of the intellect, then we are no different than animals. So the chariot metaphor becomes very, very important to remember. So that is what it is. Now, Ananta Vijayam Raja Kuntiputro Yudhishthiraha Nakula Sahadevascha Sughoshamani Pushpakau. The king Yudhishthira, the son of Kunti, blew the Ananta Vijayam. See, that is the name of his conch. Okay, so not only the name of the warrior, but the name of the conch also is now enumerated. Nakula and Sahadev blew the Sughosha and the Manipushpaka. So these are the names of the conches. These 3 verses tell us, show us Sanjay's love for them, for the Pandavas. Okay, then काश्यश्च परमेश्वासः शिखण्डी च महारथः दृष्टद्युम्नो विराटश्च सात्यकिश्चापराजितः. The king of Kashi, an excellent archer, Parameshwasaha. Shikhandi, the mighty commander of 11,000 archers, because he's a Maharathi. Drishtadyumna and Virata and Satyaki, the unconquered. So look at the description. So Kashyasa Parameshwasa has got 3 sort of syllables to it. Parama, issue, and us. That becomes Parameshwasaha. Param, issue, and us. Us means to throw. Okay. So us is to throw. Issue is arrow. Issue is arrow. And Parama is supreme. So he's a very superior arrow thrower. Arrow thrower means archer. So Parameshwasa is an adjective to Kashyascha, the king of Kashi, who was a great archer. Then next is Shikhandi. He is a Maharathi. It means everybody is great. And I've told you the story of Shikhandi. Shikhandi is Amba, whom Bhishma had given the boon. She wanted his death, and he gave her the boon. He says, Tathastu. I've told you the story. So now Shikhandi is Draupadi's brother, a eunuch, and he's there on the battlefield, and he's the one that the Pandavas will then use to destroy Bhishma, okay, to take Bhishma out of the war. So that is Shikhandi's story. Drishtadyumna also, I've told you the story. He is also the brother of Draupadi, and he is the son of Drupada, who wanted Dronacharya killed. So Drishtadyumna, who is now the commanding officer of the Pandava army, is that's what he is. And then there is Virata, and then Satyaki, and Satyakisha aparajita means these warriors are they've never lost a war. So another adjective, that they have not lost any war. That means, you know, chances are they're not going to lose this war also. But Dhritarashtra doesn't understand anything. Drupado Draupadeyascha Sarvasha Prithivipate Saubhadrascha Mahabahuhu Shankhad Dabnum Prathak Prathaka. The Drupada and the sons of Draupadi, O Lord of the earth, and the son of Subhadra, the mighty armed, blew their respective conches. So I told you that Draupadi had 5 sons from the 5 brothers. Okay, so that's why it says sons of Draupadi. So there are the 5 sons from the 5 brothers, and then Drupada, who was the commanding officer. Now, where, see, he's the commanding officer here. See, when he blew his conch, first it was Bhagwan, then Arjun, then Yudhishthir, then Bhim, then Yudhishthir, and then Nakul Sahadev, and then all these others, and then Drupada. Okay. O Lord of the earth is addressed to Dhritarashtra. Okay, he's telling Dhritarashtra, this is a report. And the son of Subhadra, Abhimanyu. That is Abhimanyu. So that's why 7 sons were there. I told you, Draupadi's 5 sons were there. Subhadra's and Arjun's son Abhimanyu was there. And then Hidimba and Bhima, they were married. So their son was Ghatotkach. So there were 7 sons of the Pandavas who died. All of them died. Okay, so this is what it's being told. सघोषोधार्तराष्ट्राणां हृदयानि व्यदारत नभश्च पृथिवीं चैव tumulo vyanunadayan. That tumultuous sound rent the hearts of the people of Dhritarashtra's party and made both heaven and earth reverberate. So, of course, it was Bhishma's on this was like a lion's roar, only Bhishma's. But on that side, everybody, when they blew their conch, everything from heaven to earth, there was sound, like Gurudev would say. Okay. So here, this now begins Arjuna's thinking. After all this has happened, now Arjun starts thinking, and now Arjun will start speaking. So we must understand that this is not a drama that somebody wrote. This is history. That's why Mahabharata and Ramayana are known as itihasa. Itihasa means as it happened. So these are the events that have actually happened, and we must have that faith that all this this happened. Okay. I told you about keeping Bhagwan with us. There's a WhatsApp message that I received, very beautiful. They say that because we saw Kaivartaka Keshava, we saw the boatman was Keshava, we saw in the Gita Dhyana shlokas. So the message said that if you keep Keshava as your boatman or charioteer, take one of the two, the intellect should be, that's why Bhagwan has to be with us. So if you make Bhagwan the boatman, then it is not guaranteed that storms will not come when you're crossing the river or whatever. There is no guarantee that storms will not come, but there is a guarantee that the boat will never sink. That is the importance. That is the importance of keeping Bhagwan with us. Miseries will come because that Bhagwan cannot avoid. For us, Bhagwan, nobody can avoid. Why? Because we have done those type of actions in the past. So what comes to us, we cannot avoid, but how to react to what comes to us, if Bhagwan is with us, our reaction will be correct. It will be a response. So we will not be miserable. We will not become miseries will come. There is no way that anybody can change that, but to be miserable or not to be miserable is a choice that we have. And if Bhagwan is our boatman, then our boat will never sink. We will not become miserable. We will be able to bear that storm. Okay, that is the importance of the 1 and 8. Now, अथ व्यवस्थितान् दृष्ट्वा धार्तराष्ट्रान् कपिध्वजः प्रवृत्ते शस्त्रसम्पाते धनुरुद्यम्य पाण्डवः. We'll take both verses together. ऋषिकेशं तदा वाक्यम् इदमाह महीपते अर्जुन उवाच सेनयोरुभयोर्मध्ये रथं स्थापयमेच्युत यावदेतान्निरीक्षेऽहं योद्धुकामान्वस्थितान् कैर्मया सह योद्धव्यम् अस्मिन् रणसमुद्यमे. Then, seeing the people of Dhritarashtra's party standing arrayed and the discharge of weapons about to begin, Arjuna, the son of Pandu, whose ensign was a monkey, took up his bow and said these words to Krishna, Rishikesha, O Lord of the earth. in the midst of, Arjuna said, in the midst of the two armies, place my chariot, O Achyuta, that I may behold those who stand here desirous of fighting, and on this eve of battle, let me know with whom all must I fight. Point number one to note here, like I already told you, Arjun started speaking only after Bhagwan had blown his conch, after all war had been sort of declared. Then Arjun has started thinking, Arjun has started speaking. Point is that first you must let Bhagwan take birth in your heart, and then you must start thinking. Okay, number one. Secondly, here now Arjuna's behavior is coming out. And when we look at Arjuna's behavior, it is Rajasic, but it has Sattva. It has more Sattva in it. There's a predominance of Sattva. Okay. So then seeing the people of Dhritarashtra's party standing arrayed, and the discharge of a why, because get set has been said, right? The conch has been blown. Conches have been blown. So it's get set is done. So everybody's set now. When the order will come, now start fighting. This monkey I told you, ensign, when the war was before the war was about to begin, Bhagwan Shri Krishna, Hanumanji is considered as Chiranjeevi. Chiranjeevi means he's living forever. They say that Hanumanji, when Sri Ram left this earth, Sri Ram left the abode in human form. He left. Bhagwan Krishna, he actually was killed. Bhagwan was killed. Bhagwan Krishna was killed. But Ram just entered the Sharayu river and he went away. But when he went, he told Hanumanji that you will stay on this earth forever to exemplify bhakti, devotee, because you're one of my greatest devotees. So you will exemplify bhakti. And one more point is Bhishma Pitamaha is considered as a great bhakta of Sri Krishna in the lines of Hanumanji. Yeah? He's equal to Hanumanji, Naradji, Prahlad. So Bhishma was that much of a devotee of Bhagwan Shri Krishna. So when this war was about to happen, Shri Krishna tells Hanumanji to come and sit on the chariot of Arjuna to stabilize it. So that because Hanumanji is so strong. It is also said that Hanumanji heard the Bhagavad Gita. Right? He was up there. Now what could he do? Bhagwan is standing in the chariot. He had no choice. He couldn't leave, and he heard it. So after the war, he comes to Shri Krishna and he asks for forgiveness. He says, Bhagwan, I have heard your Gita without your permission. So what prashchit should I do? Because see the humility. Huh? So Bhagwan says that you write a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. So there is actually a commentary by Hanuman known as Hanumat Gita. That's the name of that commentary. And he also has written a commentary on the Bhagavad Gita. Okay. That's why it's Kapi Dhwaja. Kapi is monkey and Dhwaja is the flag. So he's sitting on the flag. Yes, you can, in the picture, you can see him right there. Okay, that's Hanumanji. And also because, so that's that. Okay, now took up his bow and said these words. So now he starts speaking. Okay, and down. But the problem is when he speaks also, now what does he speak? In the midst of the two armies, place my chariot. So take me to the middle of the two chariot. Oh, Achyuta is to fall. Achyuta means one who never falls. So this is another name of Bhagwan Shri Krishna. It will come again. One who doesn't fall. That I may behold those who stand here desirous of fighting, and on this eve of battle, let me know. Now, it's the same question that we have to raise when Duryodhan had started speaking, and we said that did not Drodacharya know who is on the other side and who is on this side? Why did Duryodhan have to speak? So same question we have to ask here. In all fairness, did not Arjun know who was on the other side and who was on this side? It was not a secret. It was not a secret. So what is the point of Arjun saying this? So what is now coming out is Arjun's arrogance. Here we see his arrogance. What is happening with Arjun is that you know, he was a warrior who had not lost any war in his entire life. Full life had gone by and he had not lost a single war. Now what happens is, when success is there constantly, two things happen. One is arrogance of success comes. That's why we have to take these arrogance comes, right? Oh, I've never lost a war battle, right? I have never failed in whatever project that I did. And second thing is, you start taking things for granted, because when you have done n number of things and you have succeeded in all those things, then n plus one thing, you're going to become complacent. This is what is now coming out from Arjun, that there is that arrogance that I have not lost the battle. Because what was his point also? Why do you want to inspect the armies? Same, we cannot say that, oh, did Dronacharya not know that Duryodhan, but then why is Arjun? He's asking the same thing. So this is why, this is the, but Arjun has not spoken before. Arjun has spoken after Bhagwan blew his conch. Duryodhan has spoken before. So that is a difference. Okay. And Arjun is not saying, I want to see those people who have come to give their life for me. He is not saying those words. So there is a difference. Please understand, there is a difference. So, okay, 10 minutes are there. I will stop here. Are there any questions or anything? Or I want to talk about the thing also. And then we'll see what he says. Now he will start his thinking. The verses that will come, Arjun Uvacha, after this, all those verses are the message that Dhritarashtra had sent on the previous evening of the war, before the war started. Don't forget that story where I told you that Sanjay comes there and tells the Pandavas that your uncle has sent you a message. It's not King Dhritarashtra, it's your uncle. My children are useless, but you guys are the good guys. And should this war happen, and the reason for the war to not happen are all the reasons that Arjun is now going to be telling. That's why I did not tell you at that time, because all the details are now going to come after this. Okay. All right. Any questions? Everybody okay? Yes. Yes, Shivram.
Jayaji, one question I had was when you said we identify Dhritarashtra with tamas, and then Duryodhana with rajas, and Arjuna with primarily sattva, but he has rajas as well. So are we saying that, are we trying to understand that this is the path of the intellect becoming higher and higher? Tamas is the lowest, but as you keep going, rajas, because in rajas, after making a statement, he then realizes his folly. So there is certain amount of intellect working there because there is some feedback. But as we move towards sattva, is that you said that is the highest point of intellect, and after that we drop intellect. Intellect is dropped beyond sattva.
Yeah, it's mind intellect.
Mind intellect.
Mind intellect. And yes, like what we need to do is we need to go to the sattvic level. That is purushartha, that is sadhana. We can do that. That can be, they can be changed. And I've already told you that none of them can become 0%. Even Gurudev slept for 3 hours every night. He slept at 12, he woke up at 3. So very minimal tamas, right? So we can move up to sattva, and then what we need to do, and that will also come in this chapter, where Arjun falls from sattva. So we have to constantly practice and remain at sattva. So what happens is, then you go into a superior kind of a sattva. You know, it's a Shuddha Sattva. That is the technical word for it. Shuddha is pure. As it is, we are saying Sattva is purity and Rajas, Tamas are impurities. But there is Shuddha Sattva. You know, there can be a clean white cloth and there can be that brightness. That's what they say, bright, you know, so Shuddha Sattva. And then Shuddha Sattva is what is beyond Sattva actually. But with sattva, and that will come in Arjuna's behavior, when you reach this level of sattva, the problem is you start seeing the difference between yourself and these Rajasic other people. And then, and this is exactly what Arjun will do. He will say, the Dhartar is coming in the next verse only. Dhartar Rashtrasya Durbuddhehe. He refers to them as the evil-minded sons of the Dhritarashtra. So in Sattva, what happens is when I become Sattvic and I say, I'm Sattvic and you're Rajasic, I fall from Sattva. I am falling. Forget they are Rajasic only. So there's no question for them to fall. But when as a Sattvic person, when I'm trying to develop Sattva and I say that these other people are doing this, I fall. That point has to be remembered. So that is what should prevent us from criticizing anybody else. You in your mind, you may know that this is, you just say, okay, I don't want to get involved and I don't want to behave like this. But if you say, and this is what Arjun says, and that is what Bhagwan doesn't like. So details will come, but this is what it is. You go to Sattva and then you remain there.
Thank you, Jayaji. Jayaji, one very story-based question, if I'm permitted, if I can ask you. You mentioned Satyaki also here, but what little I remember is that Krishna promised, he gave Arjuna and Duryodhana the option between himself and his army, but Satyaki was a part of Krishna's army. How come he is fighting with
But
Pandava?
there could be more than one Satyaki, na Baba?
But
why should there be only one Satyaki?
But he's called the charioteer of Krishna in the book itself.
Satyaki was the charioteer of Krishna, agreed. But this Satyaki is probably not the charioteer. He's probably some king.
Okay.
There can be multiple names. No?
Okay.
Satyaki is the charioteer of Krishna, but now Krishna himself has become charioteer. So probably his charioteer was on holidays. Why should he go fight? Charioteers don't fight.
Okay.
Charioteers don't fight. And the charioteer wouldn't be a Maharati, a Parajita. That means he has already fought wars.
Right.
Satyaki here has been described as a Parajita, one who has never been defeated. Now a charioteer, where will he go and fight? Charioteer is a Sutaputra, na? He's not a Kshatriya. Charioteer is not a Kshatriya. So this Satyaki is different.
Okay. Because book says otherwise, that's why I asked Jayaji. That's what confused me.
Book says the charioteer of Krishna, Satyaki and Virata, and Satyaki the unconquered.
So the last one there, if you go in the very last, the paragraph before the last one, the last sentence says the charioteer of Krishna, who was also a battalion commander in the Pandava army, was called Satyaki.
Really? Where? And Sadeva's Bigul means
105, page 105.
No, mine is 57. These names in them need not have, see, these names in themselves need not have any symbolical meaning as these commentators would like to establish. There are some who would like to read in these specific names of the five conscious of the six symbolical, six mystical centers, chakra. Okay, this, where are you reading?
This is in 17th verse, 18th verse.
Are you reading from Gurudev's commentary?
Yes, Jayaji. It is this book itself, Jayaji.
Oh, here, in these two verses, we have the enumeration of the great Maharathas, battalion commanders who with enthusiasm loudly blew their conches again in an ascending cadence. The arrow that ultimately felled Bhishma in the Mahabharata war came from Shikhandi. The charioteer of Krishna was also, but in the Pandava army was called Satyaki. I don't know. By Gurudev, this is Gurudev's commentary, so no.
No, just
yeah. Any other questions?
Leelaji had a question.
Philosophy. More we should stick to the philosophy. Like I told you, this one doesn't have a commentary by Bhagwan Shankaracharya. So we have studied, whatever I have studied is from my acharyas who have studied from other commentaries. Okay? No questions? Yeah.
Yeah, Hari Om Jayaji, is Leela here. What about Sanjay? Like he's taking sort of inside side of the Pandavas. Would you call it Satvik or Rajashi there?
Don't worry.
Sanjay.
Don't worry about Sanjay. Don't worry about other people. He had a soft corner for the Pandavas, so he has described. So there is no need to go into details of that. That's why I told you, don't try to judge others, just try to judge yourself. It's not relevant. It's not relevant whether Sanjay was sattvic or rajasic or tamasic. It's not relevant. Don't waste your energies in thinking about that.
Thank you.
Tanu, you had a question?
Yeah, Namaste, Jayaji. I was just on that topic of Sattvic. So my sort of understanding is that if you are Sattvic, you don't see sort of a separation between you and the others, and hence the judging doesn't happen because it's the same fabric that's running in and through all of us. And then you don't sort of get caught up in thinking, you know, whether someone has superior intellect or doesn't have. Of course, it's super hard to maintain all the time, but I felt that that sort of went well along with, yeah, you will fall from sattva if you see a separation between yourself and others.
In sattva, when you say you cannot say that in sattva you will not see a separation, because to not see any separation at all, you have to go beyond sattva. Because Om is beyond sattva. The supreme reality is beyond sattva. So until you have realized your oneness with Brahman, you will always see differences. Okay, so even in sattva, you cannot say that is that means sattva is Brahman. Brahman is not even sattva. Brahman is beyond sattva. So there is, that's why we said from sattva you have to go to Shuddha sattva. Shuddha sattva has to be attained. Only attaining sattvic is not the final battle. It's a small war, but not the full battle. So the sadhana, the purushartha or the self-effort has to be put in polishing the mind and making it sattvic more and more and more and more. So the differences that you see become less and less and less. And when they become less, and if you can take it to a point of zero, you have transcended sattva. So it's less. A rajasic person will see even more. Sattvic person will see less, or sattvic person will be more more inclined to say that, you know what, it's his gunas playing. It's okay, leave him alone. That is what a sattvic. Rajasic will stay there and say, why are you doing this? What is happening? This, that, and all. So it should not be taken that a sattva does not see differences. That's not correct. Anyway, we shall close now.